Staff Sergeant Jack Hawkins stood at perfect attention in the United Nations Defense Chamber, his dress blues immaculate, his combat medals gleaming under the harsh lights. The delegation of alien representatives towered over the human officials, their crystalline technology casting rainbow patterns across the chamber's marble floors. Their leader, High Commander Zixtal of the Galactic Council, gestured with 3 of his 6 arms while delivering their assessment. Your species, the translator rendered his complex harmonics into English, lacks the basic prerequisites for galactic military service. Your strongest soldiers cannot match even our medical personnel in terms of physical capability. Hawkins felt his jaw tighten but maintained his composure. 15 years of Special Forces operations, 3 tours in active combat zones, and 7 distinguished combat crosses meant nothing to these beings. They saw only the numbers, the raw data. The Vexitheri delegate, a massive being with iridescent scales and multiple compound eyes, stepped forward. We have analyzed your combat footage. Your reliance on external tools rather than natural evolution makes you. The translator paused, searching for the right word. Disadvantaged. Primitive. A murmur of discontent rippled through the human officials. General Santos, Earth's chief of defense, started to object, but the Galactic Council representatives continued their assessment without pause. Your atmosphere is toxic by galactic standards. Your gravity is crushing. Your species has evolved in conditions that make you inherently weak, the Zarkali representative added, her holographic form flickering with what their cultural briefings had identified as amusement. The Council has decided Earth requires protection status. Hawkins knew what that meant. He'd read the briefing documents. Protection status was just diplomatic language for subjugation. Earth would become a protected territory. Our military disbanded, our defense capabilities limited to Council-approved technologies. With all due respect, Hawkins found himself speaking before he realized he'd made the decision. I request permission to challenge this assessment through the rites of combat demonstration. The chamber fell silent. The aliens turned their various sensory organs toward him, some expressing what he recognized as surprise, others amusement. You invoke the ancient rites. High Commander Zixtal's translator produced something close to a laugh. You understand this would mean participating in the galactic combat trials, facing the greatest warriors of 17 spacefaring species. I do, sir. Hawkins kept his voice steady, professional. According to your own laws, any species facing protection status has the right to prove their military capability through champion combat. The Vexitheri delegate's scales rippled with color. The trials are not simple contests, human. They are designed to test every aspect of military capability. Strength, speed, tactical awareness, combat efficiency. No single being from your species could hope to compete. Then you have nothing to lose by allowing me to try. Hawkins met the alien's compound eyes without flinching. Unless you're worried about being proved wrong. A series of complex harmonics filled the chamber as the delegates communicated among themselves. General Santos shot Hawkins a warning look, but he could see the slight smile at the corner of her mouth. Very well, High Commander Zixtal finally announced. The Council accepts your challenge. You will have 3 Earth months to prepare. The trials begin at the galactic core. When you fail, and you will fail, Earth will accept protection status without further objection. And when I succeed, Hawkins replied, emphasizing the when, Earth will be recognized as a full military power with all rights and privileges thereof. The aliens left the chamber shortly after, their dismissive attitudes making it clear they considered the matter settled. As the human officials began their heated discussions about his action, Hawkins remained at attention, his mind already racing through the challenges ahead. He had just bet the future of human independence on his ability to prove these aliens wrong. But they had made one critical mistake. They had dismissed humans as weak simply because we were different. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in our muscles or our technology. It was in our refusal to accept limitations placed upon us by others. The training facility on Mars' Olympus Mons base wasn't built for humans. Hawkins watched through the observation window as robotic drones reconstructed various alien combat environments, each one designed to test different aspects of galactic warfare. The lower gravity made his stomach lurch, but he'd been training here for 6 weeks now. Adaptation was key. "Your next opponent will be a Zarkali," Dr. Emma Reynolds said, pulling up holographic combat footage. "They move at roughly 8 times human speed in short bursts. No one has ever beaten them in direct combat." Hawkins studied the footage, noting how the crystalline aliens moved. "They're too perfect," he muttered, making notes on his tablet. "Look at that pattern. It's the same every time." "That's their evolution," Reynolds replied. "Each species has developed such specific strengths that they've stopped adapting. The Zarkali have been the fastest for so long they'd forgotten how to fight slow." The revelation had come during his 3rd week of training. While the alien species had evolved into perfect warriors, they'd lost something crucial: versatility. Each race had become so specialized, so confident in their superior abilities, that they'd abandoned the need to improvise. Hawkins moved to the training floor, his muscles protesting after hours of drills. The facility's AI activated, creating a holographic Zarkali opponent. "Run combat simulation Delta 7. The alien blur attacked, moving just as the footage had shown. But this time, Hawkins was ready. Instead of trying to match its speed, he did something no other species had considered. He limited the battlefield. "Analysis complete," the AI announced after the simulation ended. "Victory achieved through environmental manipulation. Technique logged." Reynolds looked up from her data pad, impressed. "You trapped it in a corner, forced it to fight in close quarters where its speed was a disadvantage." "They've never had to fight dirty," Hawkins explained, wiping sweat from his brow. "Every species thinks combat is about being the best at one thing. Humans, we're the jack of all trades, master of none. And that's our strength." The next simulation featured a Vextheri warrior, 3 times Hawkins' size, with natural armor plating. The species was known for their unbreakable battle formations and overwhelming strength. The hologram charged forward, following perfect combat protocols that had won countless battles. Hawkins sidestepped, using the alien's momentum against it. In real combat, no Vextheri would ever expect a weaker species to stand their ground. Their entire combat doctrine was based on overwhelming force meeting overwhelming force. "They're all the same," he explained to Reynolds later, reviewing the day's combat data. "Every species has turned their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The Zarkali are too fast to fight smart. The Vextheri are too strong to consider finesse. The telepathic Krusei rely so much on mind reading they've forgotten to watch their surroundings." Reynolds nodded, adding to her reports. "And the Galactic Council has no idea what's coming, do they? They think I'm training to match them strength for strength." Hawkins pulled up the combat footage from his latest simulation. "But that's not the human way. We've never been the strongest, fastest, or most advanced. We've always been the ones who find a way to win anyway." The training continued, day after day. While the alien observers watched him practice basic combat forms, Hawkins was really learning something far more valuable: their psychology. Every species had evolved past the need for fear, past the drive to adapt. They'd become perfect, and that made them perfectly predictable. As his last training session ended, a message from Earth Command flashed across his screen. The Galactic combat trials would begin in 1 week. The alien bookmakers had him listed as the most likely to be eliminated in the first round. Hawkins smiled, thinking of all the weaknesses he'd discovered, all the flaws in their perfect evolution. They called Earth weak because we hadn't specialized, because we still needed to adapt and overcome. They were about to learn why humanity's greatest strength was never being strong enough to stop improving. The arena at the Galactic core made Madison Square Garden look like a high school gymnasium. Hawkins stood in the preparation chamber, surrounded by alien technology that made Earth's most advanced equipment look like stone tools. His first opponent would be Kralthex, a 12-foot warrior from the silicon-based Drithen Empire. Contestant Hawkins, a mechanized voice announced, "Your allocated equipment time has begun." The rules allowed each competitor to select 3 items from their species' standard military loadout. The alien observers had expected him to choose energy weapons or power armor. Instead, he picked a combat knife, a length of carbon fiber rope, and a small canister of liquid nitrogen. Irregular choices detected, the system announced. "Confirm selection." "Confirmed," Hawkins replied, checking the edge of his knife. The aliens wouldn't understand. They never did. The arena door opened, revealing a battlefield that seemed designed specifically to favor the Drithen. Crystal formations jutted from the ground, perfect for a silicon-based life form to draw strength from. The temperature was set to nearly 200 degrees Fahrenheit, ideal conditions for his opponent. Kralthex entered from the opposite side, his crystalline body gleaming under the artificial suns. "Your challenge is noted, Earth being." The translation circuit rendered, "Your courage will be remembered after your defeat." The arena's energy barriers hummed to life, trapping them inside. Hawkins could hear the commentary from the alien broadcasters, already discussing how quickly the human would fall. They were about to learn why humanity had survived every challenge Earth had ever thrown at us. Kralthex moved first, his crystalline form allowing him to merge with and emerge from the crystal formations at will. It was like fighting someone who could swim through solid rock. The Drithen's first strike shattered the ground where Hawkins had been standing a split second earlier. "Primitive," Kralthex taunted as Hawkins rolled away. "You cannot hope to harm my form with such basic tools." Hawkins didn't respond. He was too busy counting steps, measuring angles, and setting up his strategy. The Drithen could shatter steel with a touch, but like all evolved predators, he had patterns. 3 steps between attacks, always emerging at right angles. Perfect, predictable movements. The battle continued for 10 minutes, with Hawkins seemingly just avoiding destruction. The audience was getting restless, expecting the human to tire. Instead, Hawkins had been leading his opponent in a specific pattern, using the rope to mark territories, in ways that seemed random. "Your endurance is remarkable," Kralthex admitted, "but futile. I can maintain this level of combat for days." "That's nice," Hawkins replied, finally speaking. "But you really should have asked why I've been making you chase me in a spiral pattern." Before the Drithen could process this, Hawkins triggered his trap. The rope he'd been laying down was more than a marker. It was a guide for what came next. He broke the liquid nitrogen canister at the pattern center, the freezing liquid following the spiral he created. The extreme temperature change hit Kralthex's silicon-based form like a hammer. Crystalline structures that had been heat-stressed from combat suddenly cooled, creating microscopic fractures throughout his body. The Drithen tried to merge with the nearest crystal formation for safety, but Hawkins had anticipated this. His knife, which the aliens had dismissed as primitive, had been carefully positioned earlier. As Kralthex moved to escape, the blade was exactly where it needed to be. The combination of thermal stress and precisely applied force did what no energy weapon could have done. It created a catastrophic fracture through the Drithen's core. The arena fell silent as Kralthex's form collapsed into crystalline shards. No one had ever seen a Drithen defeated by such simple means. The victory display flashed above the arena, but Hawkins was already walking away, his mind on the next fight. In the observer's box, the alien bookmakers were frantically recalculating their odds. They'd just witnessed something they'd thought impossible. A primitive human had defeated an evolutionarily superior opponent using nothing but basic physics and careful planning. What they didn't understand yet was that this was just the beginning. The assassination attempt came at ship's night, when the station's artificial lighting dimmed to simulate Earth's diurnal cycle. Hawkins had been expecting it since his second victory in the arena. What his would-be killers didn't know was that he hadn't actually slept in his quarters for 3 days. The Zarkeli assassin moved like lightning through the darkened room, its crystalline blades aimed at the sleeping form in the bed. The attack was perfect, silent, and would have been fatal if the figure in the bed had been more than carefully arranged pillows. "You know," Hawkins said from his position in the doorway, "on Earth, we have these things called horror movies. Rule number 1 is, never assume your target is really sleeping." The assassin spun, but Hawkins had already triggered the gravitic trap he'd salvaged from his last arena fight. The Zarkeli found itself suddenly weighing 3 times its normal mass. Its lightning speed turned against it, as momentum became a prison. "Security breach in contestant quarter 7, Hawkins announced into his comm unit, but he was already moving. He had 4 minutes before station security arrived, and he intended to make them count. "Who sent you?" he asked, though he didn't expect an answer. The assassin's crystalline form vibrated in what might have been laughter. "Your species cannot comprehend the politics at play." The translator rendered its harmonic speech. "Your victory against the Drithen was inconvenient for certain parties." Hawkins nodded, recording the conversation with his quarter's security systems, "because it proved your assessment of humanity wrong. We're not supposed to be clever enough to win these fights." The next day, the Galactic Council's Security Committee convened an emergency session. The Vix-Theri delegation was notably silent as evidence of the assassination attempt was presented. What should have been a scandal threatening to derail the games instead became another example of human capability. "You're telling me?" one of the council members asked, their translator struggling to convey their disbelief, "that the human not only anticipated the attack, but used it to gather intelligence." Dr. Reynolds, now acting as Earth's diplomatic representative, allowed herself a small smile. "Staff Sergeant Hawkins has extensive experience in counterintelligence operations. On Earth, we have a saying, paranoia is just having all the facts." The attempt had the opposite effect of what its planners had intended. Instead of eliminating the human threat, it made Hawkins a celebrity. The galactic media became fascinated by the species that slept with one eye open. That turned assassination attempts into opportunities. "They still don't get it," Hawkins told Reynolds as they reviewed the security footage from 2 more failed attempts. "Every time they try to kill me, they show me their tactics, their technology, their weaknesses." The latest attempt had come from a shape-shifting Xteri, who had tried to replace his medical officer. But humans had been writing stories about shapeshifters for centuries. A few simple code words and identity checks had revealed the imposter before they got within 10 feet of him. "The betting odds on your next match have shifted," Reynolds noted, checking her datapad. "You're no longer the underdog." Hawkins checked his equipment for the 100th time, a habit born from years of combat experience. Tomorrow, he would face a genetically engineered warrior from the Mirkath Dominion. The assassins had failed to kill him, but they had succeeded in something else. They'd taught him even more about his future opponents. "They think these attempts have weakened me," he said, testing the edge of a new blade. "They don't understand that humans get stronger under pressure. Every attack is just another training session." As he prepared for his next match, the station's security systems recorded 3 more attempts to access his quarters. Each one failed against the low-tech but effective countermeasures he'd installed. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson about humanity. "We survived not because We were the strongest, but because we never stopped expecting the next attack. The Meerkat champion, designation Alpha X847, was the product of 10,000 years of genetic engineering. Its combat algorithm had been perfected through millions of simulated battles. As Hawkins watched the creature warm up in the arena, he noticed something that made him smile. It was performing the exact same sequence of movements it had used in every previous match. "Your heart rate is elevated," Dr. Reynolds noted from the preparation chamber. "Are you concerned?" "Nope," Hawkins replied, checking his minimal equipment. "I'm looking forward to this. They made one big mistake with their perfect warrior." "And what's that?" "They programmed it to fight. They never taught it to win." The arena today was a sterile environment, all clean lines and perfect angles, chosen to complement the Meerkat's precise fighting style. As Hawkins entered, he did something that made the alien audiences murmur in confusion. He started whistling an old Earth tune. Contestant Alpha X847 versus Earth Representative Hawkins, the arena AI announced. "Combat begins in 3, 2. "Hey, quick question before we start," Hawkins called out, his voice echoing through the arena. "Does your combat algorithm account for trash talk, or did they forget to program a personality?" The Meerkat champion paused mid-stance, its perfectly engineered features showing the first hint of confusion. In the 10,000 years of the games, no one had ever engaged in conversation during the opening ceremony. "Combat has not yet commenced," Alpha X847 stated, its synthesized voice perfect and empty. "Psychological warfare is ineffective against my programming." "See, that's what I love about you lab-grown tights," Hawkins continued, casually stretching, as if he were at a gym back on Earth. "You actually announce your weaknesses. Psychological warfare is ineffective. Might as well say, please mess with my head." The fight began, and the Meerkat moved with perfect precision. Every strike was calculated to maximum efficiency, every defense optimized for energy conservation. But Hawkins wasn't fighting. He was talking. "You know what the difference is between us?" he asked, ducking under a strike that would have decapitated him. "I've lost fights. Bet you never have. Bet you don't even know how to lose." The champion's attacks maintained their precision, but something was wrong. Its combat algorithm was trying to adapt to an opponent who wasn't following any known combat pattern. "Your form is perfect," Hawkins commented, rolling away from a lightning-fast combination. "But perfect is predictable. Let me guess, next you'll try a high-low combination, following your standard engagement protocol." The Meerkat hesitated for a microsecond. Exactly as Hawkins had planned. The perfect warrior made the perfect mistake, following its programming instead of its instincts. "The human is not engaging in combat," the champion announced to the referees. "This violates Protocol 7. "See, there you go again," Hawkins interrupted. "Always following rules. Always doing what you're told. Must be nice, never having to think for yourself." The champion's next attack was faster, but less precise. Its perfect sequence was disrupted by something its algorithm had never encountered: frustration. The Galactic audience watched in fascination as the legendary Meerkat precision began to break down. Each taunt, each casual disregard for combat tradition, forced the champion's combat computer to waste processing power on irrelevant variables. "You're not fighting wrong," Hawkins said, finally launching his first attack. "You're just fighting like someone who's never had to fight for their life, like someone who's never been scared, never been angry, never wanted something so bad that they'd break every rule to get it." The end came not with a spectacular display of strength or speed, but with a simple truth. The perfect warrior had never learned to handle imperfection. When Hawkins finally struck, it was with a series of technically flawed but tactically brilliant moves that no combat algorithm could predict. As the victory signal sounded, the arena was silent. The Meerkat champion lay defeated, its perfect record broken by what its combat computer would later classify as illogical combat behaviors. "That's the problem with being perfect," Hawkins said to the stunned audience. "You never learn how to get back up when you fall." The medical bay scanners showed what 3 matches had done to Hawkins' body: 2 cracked ribs, a hairline fracture in his left arm, and enough bruising to make a boxing champion wince. Dr. Reynolds shook her head as she reviewed the data. "The Crusade champion isn't like the others," she warned, applying a regenerative patch to his ribs. "They're telepathic, Class 5 mental abilities. They don't just read thoughts. They can break minds." Hawkins nodded, already planning. "They've never failed to win a mental duel, have they?" "Never. Their species evolved perfect mental defenses along with their offensive capabilities. No one has ever." "Perfect," Hawkins interrupted. "That's what we need." The arena for this match was different. A featureless white void designed to eliminate all external stimuli. The Crusade champion, Anxelara, floated several inches off the ground, its crystalline head structure pulsing with psychic energy. "Your species' mental architecture is chaotic." Anxelara's thoughts echoed in Hawkins' mind. "This will be quick, and as painless as you allow it to be." Hawkins felt the first probe against his mental defenses. The Crusade was right. Compared to their ordered, evolved telepathic abilities, human minds were a mess of contradictions and chaos. That was exactly what he was counting on. The first real attack came like a spear of pure thought, designed to shatter his mental barriers. Instead of resisting, Hawkins did something no opponent had ever tried. He opened his mind completely. The Crusade champion staggered, as if physically struck. Instead of the ordered thoughts they were prepared to battle, they found themselves drowning in the ocean of human consciousness. What is this?" Anxelara's thoughts were no longer confident. "Your mind should not be like this." Hawkins grinned through the pain. "You evolved perfect mental powers. We evolved something else. Trauma response. You're not just reading my mind. You're feeling every fight, every loss, every moment of fear and rage I've ever experienced." The champion's crystal structure began to pulse erratically. Their perfect mental defenses were useless against something they'd never encountered. Raw human emotion. "Your thoughts. They don't follow any pattern." Anxelara struggled to maintain control. "The pain should have broken you already." "That's the thing about humans," Hawkins pushed back, forcing more memories to the surface. "Pain doesn't break us. It makes us stronger." In the observation deck, the medical monitors were going crazy. Both competitors' neural patterns were spiking beyond safe levels. But while the Crusade was fighting to maintain their sanity against the chaos of human thought, Hawkins was in familiar territory. "You want to see what a human mind can do?" He challenged and opened the floodgates. Every battle he'd ever fought, every loss he'd endured, the raw determination that kept humans fighting when logic said to surrender, the spite that made them stand when their bodies begged to fall, the sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat that had kept humanity alive through every disaster. The Crusade champion screamed, a sound that echoed both mentally and physically through the arena. Their perfect mental defenses shattered against something they'd never trained for, the chaotic, contradictory, beautiful mess that was human consciousness. When the medical teams rushed in, they found both fighters unconscious. Hawkins would spend 3 days in recovery, his mind rebuilding itself from the strain. The Crusade champion would take longer. Their perfect mental evolution had never prepared them for the raw power of human emotional resilience. In the end, the victory was awarded to Hawkins, not because he'd defeated the Crusade champion in combat, but because he'd shown the galaxy something they'd never understood about humanity. Our greatest strength isn't in our ability to fight, but in our ability to endure. The final arena was different. No artificial environments, no specialized terrains. Just a massive empty space with scattered debris and cover. A battlefield that favored no one and everyone. General Cavorn of the Vix Theory stood 3 times Hawkins' height, his iridescent battle armor gleaming under the arena lights. He had personally led armies to victory in 17 planetary conquests. His species had evolved natural armor that could deflect energy weapons, strength that could crush steel, and battle computers that could process 1,000,000 combat variables per second. I have studied your species' military history. Cavorn's translator boomed across the arena. Your wars are primitive, brutal, lacking in honor. Hawkins checked his equipment one last time. The same basic loadout he'd started with. That's because we never had the luxury of fighting fair. We had to learn the hard way. The battle began with Cavorn launching a perfect assault, his movements following classical Vix Theory battle doctrine. But Hawkins wasn't there. He was already moving, using techniques that predated written history. Guerrilla warfare, Hawkins called out from cover. Humans learned it fighting enemies bigger and stronger than us. We learned that honor doesn't keep you alive. Adaptation does. Cavorn's advanced targeting systems struggled to track the human who moved like a ghost between debris, never staying still long enough to present a target. Each time the Vix Theory champion brought his superior weapons to bear, he found only empty space. Your tactics are those of a species that fears direct combat, Cavorn declared, his frustration evident. Fear. Hawkins' voice echoed from multiple directions. Fear is why we're still alive. Fear taught us to be smarter, faster, better. While your species was evolving natural armor, we were learning to target weak points. While you were developing strength, we were learning to use your strength against you. A small object rolled near Cavorn's feet, not a weapon, but a holographic projector. It activated, showing scenes from Earth's military history. Ancient hunters taking down massive prey with simple tools, guerrilla fighters defeating larger armies, modern special forces using minimal equipment to achieve impossible objectives. Every battle we've ever fought has been against something bigger, stronger, or more advanced than us. Hawkins continued, his voice now coming from behind the champion. We never had the luxury of evolution. We had to learn. Cavorn spun, his battle computer warning of an attack, but again found nothing. The holographic images continued, showing the price of human victory, the casualties, the sacrifices, the lessons written in blood. Your species calls this horror, Hawkins said. We call it Tuesday. Every fight taught us something new. Every loss made us adapt. Every victory showed us a new way to win. The champion's perfect defense was beginning to show cracks. His movements, once precise and measured, became more erratic as he failed to apply his training to an opponent who refused to follow any known combat doctrine. Face me with honor, Cavorn demanded. Honor is a luxury of the strong, Hawkins replied, finally engaging directly. Survival is the art of the weak. What followed was a masterclass in human combat evolution. Every dirty trick, every desperate strategy that had kept humanity alive through its blood-soaked history was brought to bear. When Cavorn expected strength, he found leverage. When he anticipated defense, he met misdirection. The end came not with a display of power, but with a simple truth. The galaxy's greatest warriors had never learned to fight like someone with everything to lose. As the victory signal sounded over Cavorn's immobilized form, Hawkins helped the fallen champion up. A human gesture that confused the watching aliens. This is why we survived, Hawkins explained to his defeated opponent. Not because we're strong, but because we never forgot what it means to be weak. Your species evolved beyond fear. We learned to make fear our weapon. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. The massive holographic displays showed footage from each of Hawkins' victories, analyzed frame by frame, as the various species tried to understand what they'd witnessed. High Commander Zixtol stood before the assembly, his previous confidence replaced by something new: respect. "We have made a grave error in our assessment of Earth," the commander's translator rendered his complex harmonics. "We mistook civilization for evolution. We confused advancement with improvement. And in doing so, we nearly overlooked the most remarkable species we have ever encountered." In the diplomatic section, Dr. Reynolds watched as Hawkins stood at parade rest, his posture perfect despite the still healing injuries from his battles. The medals on his dress blues seemed almost modest compared to the ornate decorations of the alien delegates. "The human representative has done more than win combat trials," General Cavorn addressed the assembly, his defeat having taught him something his species had forgotten. "He has shown us the flaw in our own evolution. We became so perfect that we stopped adapting, so strong that we forgot how to bend without breaking." The screen shifted to show new images: alien military academies already incorporating human combat techniques, strategic doctrines being rewritten to include Earth's hard-won lessons. The Zarkali were learning to fight at slower speeds. The Krasay were studying human mental resilience. Even the Vixthuri were training in asymmetrical warfare. "Earth will not be placed under protection status," Zixtol announced. "Instead, we propose a new classification: Advanced Practical Combat Instructors. Humanity has much to teach us about survival." Hawkins finally stepped forward to address the council. "With respect, Commander, you're still missing the point. We don't excel at combat because we want to. We excel because we had to. Every species here evolved some perfect advantage: natural weapons, enhanced speed, telepathy. Humans, we got something better: the ability to look at a superior opponent and say, 'We'll find a way.'" The chamber erupted in discussion as translation arrays struggled to keep up with the multiple conversations. On one screen, footage showed alien cadets attempting human special forces training, learning to fight without relying on their evolutionary advantages. On another, scientific analysis of human history revealed how Earth's harsh conditions had created a species that refused to accept limitations. "My victory wasn't about proving human strength," Hawkins continued. "It was about showing that true power isn't in being unbeatable. It's in knowing how to get back up when you're beaten. Every species here evolved to be perfect at something. Humans evolved to be perfect at adapting to everything." Dr. Reynolds watched as understanding dawned across the alien faces. They'd expected Earth to celebrate its military victory. Instead, they were being offered a lesson in survival that their perfect evolution had never taught them. The final resolution was unanimous. Earth would join the galactic community, not as a protected species, but as a full member with unique advisory status in military matters. The request for human military trainers had already exceeded Earth's ability to provide them. As the session ended, a young Vixthuri cadet approached Hawkins with a question that had been puzzling many. "How do we learn to be weak?" Hawkins smiled. "You don't learn to be weak. You learn that strength isn't about being unbeatable. It's about knowing that no matter how many times you get knocked down, you can always find a way back up." The last images on the screen showed something that would have been impossible months ago: alien warriors training without their advanced technology, learning to rely on ingenuity instead of evolution. They were learning what humanity had known all along: that true strength lies not in being perfect, but in never stopping to improve. Humanity had come to the stars expecting to be the weakest species. Instead, they had become the teachers of a lesson written in Earth's blood and bone. There is no power greater than the will to survive.